Good evening, everybody. We have a packed house tonight. It's an exciting evening. We're going to, first I'd like to welcome everybody to the August 4th meeting of the South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners. Can we just quickly, Randy, do a roll call to see which commissioners are present this evening?
Sure. Commissioner Walk?
Here.
Commissioner Sen?
Here.
Commissioner Long?
Here.
Commissioner Kelly?
Here.
And Commissioner Morgan?
Here. Tracy, would you be so kind as to go over the virtual meeting rules for this evening?
Sure. All meeting minutes are electronically recorded. Participants' names will not be displayed during the meeting.
We can't hear her here.
Let's grab the mic for her. Thanks, Manley.
All meetings are electronically recorded. Participants' names will not be displayed during the meeting. All participants will be required to mute their microphones when not participating in the dialogue. If a participant wants courtesy of the floor or wants to make public comment or has a question on a specific topic, they must type their name and address in the chat feature. The meeting facilitator will identify and call on the individual requesting to speak. If someone is participating via phone, there will be an opportunity to ask questions, comment, once the individual has unmuted their microphone and identified themselves with name and address. If someone has requested courtesy of the floor prior to the meeting via email, the facilitator will identify and call on the individual who has requested courtesy of the floor. Public comment will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. At this point, if everybody would please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to note that all public sessions of the South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners are electronically recorded, filed, and posted in Board Docs for the public's access. I'd also like to note that the board did meet in executive session on Monday, August 2nd for personnel matters. That being said, we have a little shift in our agenda this evening to recognize some wonderful news. So we're going to we're going to go to our motions first this evening. And first we have a motion for consideration and possible action. This is a motion to proceed with the adoption of civil service eligibility lists for lieutenant and sergeant promotions. Would you like to elaborate on this a little bit, Glenn?
Certainly. Here officially to request that the Board of Commissioners adopt the current civil service promotion list for the positions of lieutenant and sergeant. The tests were held in accordance with civil service standards and approved by the Civil Service Board yesterday in our meeting. So I would like to have the Board of Commissioners officially adopt that and implement that for eligible promotions moving forward.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board on this particular motion for consideration? Are there any from the public? Please, any in chat?
Nothing in the chat.
Do I hear a motion then to proceed with the adoption of civil service eligibility list for lieutenant and sergeant promotions? I think we had a Commissioner Long. We'll take a second. Second from Commissioner Kelly. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Walk?
Yes.
Commissioner Sen?
Yes.
Commissioner Long?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
And Commissioner Morgan?
Yes, motion carries. Now to the exciting stuff. So that being said, we're going to move right into our resolutions this evening for consideration for promotions. So Chief Thorney, we'll do them one at a time. Take it?
Yes.
All right.
Possible.
Absolutely. So first on the agenda this evening, we have for consideration and possible action, a resolution appointing Eric Kleintop to the position of lieutenant for South Whitehall. Chief?
Yes, this is a great evening for the South Whitehall Township Police Department. I'm honored to respectfully request this resolution move forward from the Board of Commissioners. Eric Kleintop is a 2007 Parkland High School graduate who then moved on to receive a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Temple University in 2011. Eric was hired by the South Whitehall Township Police Department on August 23rd of 2013. He was promoted to the rank of sergeant on November 7th, 2018. And he has been a member of the Lehigh County Municipal Emergency Response Team for the last 6 years, as well as a field training officer for 6 years. And he is also the lead firearms instructor for the department. So I respectfully request that hopefully soon to be Lieutenant Eric Kleintop be promoted this evening by the Board of Commissioners.
Thank you, Chief. Very exciting. So are there any questions or comments from the board on this particular resolution for consideration?
I asked Eric to identify himself.
Oh, trust me, we're going to bring him in.
We're going to make him get pinned if
Yeah. So no questions from the board. Are there any questions or comments from the board? All right, that being said, do I hear a motion this evening to appoint Eric Kleintop to the position of lieutenant for South Whitehall Township? We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Kelly, a second from Commissioner Walk. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Walk? Yes. Commissioner Seton?
Yes.
Commissioner Long? Yes. Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
And Commissioner Morgan?
Yes, motion carries. Congratulations.
you would like to come forward and bring your significant other,
Oh, yes.
your wife would be more than happy to help you. One at a time, trying to draw blood, but. First one. Educate more on this. I figured you'd Google it, make sure we have There's only like 60 people watching.
All right. Next this evening, for consideration and possible action, we have a resolution appointing Colin Beaumont to the position of sergeant for South Whitehall Township. Chief Morgan?
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. Officer Colin Beaumont is a 2008 graduate of Nazareth Area High School, as am I, but not 2008, exactly. And he earned an associate's degree in criminal justice from Northampton Community College. He joined the U.S. Army in 2008 as a member of the Military Police Corps and served in Afghanistan, where he received a Purple Heart in 2011 for injuries sustained in combat. Colin owned the rank of sergeant prior to his discharge from the Army. Colin was hired by the South Whitehall Township Police Department in July of 2015 and became a K-9 officer in 2016 and is currently partnered with K-9 Kira. Colin has also been a field training officer since 2018 and is one of our firearms instructors for the department. So I respectfully request that we, the Board of Commissioners, approve the resolution in front of you with a motion to promote Officer Colin Beaumont to the rank of sergeant.
Wonderful. All right. Are there any questions or comments from the board on this particular resolution for consideration? From the public? All right. That being said, do I hear a motion to appoint Mr. Colin Beaumont to the position of sergeant for South Whitehall Township? We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Seton. Do I hear a second? Second from Commissioner Kelly. Can I have a roll call vote, please, Randy?
Commissioner Walk? Yes. Commissioner Seton?
Yes.
Commissioner Long?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
And Commissioner Morgan?
Yes, motion carries. Congratulations. All right. Next this evening for consideration and possible action, we have a resolution appointing Jason Crozier to the position of sergeant for South Whitehall.
Yes, Commissioners, Jason is a 2000 graduate of the Kirkland High School. He served in the United States Marine Corps from 2000 to 2008, where he earned the rank of Staff Sergeant. Jason also earned an associate's degree from the Frederick County Community College. He was hired by the South Whitehall Township Police Department on January 7, 2011. He worked in the patrol division until taking on the role as the department's community liaison officer in August of 2019, where he teaches DARE. He educates our community on crime prevention through environmental design and conducts SWT assessments for our residents. Jason also organizes and runs our Youth Law Enforcement Academy programs, as well as our Citizens Police Academy and many other community events. So I respectfully ask and request that the Board of Commissioners grant the resolution and make a motion to promote Officer Jason Crozier to the position of sergeant.
Very nice. All right, that being said, were there any questions? Ask a question. Are there any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? That being said, do I hear a motion this evening to appoint Jason Crozier to the position of sergeant for South Whitehall Township? We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Kelly, a second from
Me.
Commissioner Walk.
Commissioner Walk? Yes. Commissioner Seton?
Yes.
Commissioner Long?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly? And Commissioner Morgan?
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
Give her one time, she's appointed. All right, last but certainly not least, evening, we have a resolution for consideration and possible action appointing Timothy Shout to the position of Sergeant for South Whitehall Township.
Thank you, Commissioners. I respectfully request that we move forward with a resolution to promote Detective Shout to the rank of Sergeant. Tim is a 1994 graduate of Phillipsburg High School and attended Warren County Community College. He worked as a correctional officer in the Northampton County Prison for 8 years before being hired by the South Whitehall Township Police Department in February of 2007. Tim served 8 years in the Patrol Division before transferring to the Criminal Investigations Division, where he's been currently assigned for the last 6 years. Tim has also assisted with Lehigh County's Petzold Digital Forensic Laboratory for the last 10 years. So with that said, I respectfully request that someone from the board makes a motion to promote Detective Tim Shout to the rank of Sergeant.
Thank you, Chief. Were there any questions from the board on this? Any from the public? Any on chat?
Nothing on the chat.
All right, that being said, do I hear a motion this evening to appoint Timothy Shout to the position of Sergeant for South Whitehall Township? We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Long, a second from Commissioner Kelly. Can I have a roll call?
Commissioner Long? Yes. Commissioner Seton? Aye. Commissioner Long?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
And Commissioner Morgan?
Yes, motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Well, this was a very exciting evening for the police department, and I have to say, all of you are shining stars. That national night out last night was absolutely amazing. Congratulations to everybody. All right, we are going to move back to the beginning of the agenda and go to our minutes for consideration and possible action. First on the agenda for the minutes, we have our July 21st, 2021 Board Commissioner meeting minutes. We'll give it just a second, let everybody who doesn't want to stick around. I don't know why everybody doesn't want to stay. Yeah, say my first talk. Thanks, Karen. All right, so we have our July 21st Board of Commissioner meeting minutes. They've been made available to the commissioners. Are there any questions or comments on the July 21st meeting minutes from the board? None? All right. That being said, I hear a motion to move forward with the July 21st Board of Commissioner meeting minutes. We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Kelly. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Wall. Can I have a roll call vote, please, Randy?
Commissioner Walker? Yes. Commissioner Seton? Commissioner Long?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
And Commissioner Morgan?
Yes, motion carries. All right, next on our agenda for consideration and possible action, we have our July 7th Board of Commissioner meeting minutes. Were there any questions or comments from the board on July 7th for the Commissioner meeting? Hearing none, do I hear a motion for approval of the July 7th meeting minutes?
So moved.
We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Long. Do I hear a second? Second from Commissioner Kelly. Roll call vote, please, Randy.
Commissioner Walker? Yes. Commissioner Sims? Commissioner Long?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
And Commissioner Morgan?
Yes, motion carries. Yes. All right. We have no presentations this evening. However, we have a ordinance for consideration this evening, which is a request to advertise. It's very long, so please bear with me, everybody. I'm going to do my best. All right. This is an ordinance for consideration of the Board of Commissioners of the Township of South Whitehall, Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, authorizing and directing the issuance of its general obligation bond series of 2021 in the maximum aggregate principal amount of $15 million, the 2021 bonds or bonds pursuant to the Local Government Unit Debt Act of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania as amended and supplemented, providing the proceeds of the sale of the 2021 bonds shall be used to fund, number one, certain township improvements, two, the current refunding of the township's general obligation note series of 2014, the township's general obligation note series of 2018, and the township's general obligation note series of 2019, pursuant to a program determining that such sale shall be a private sale by negotiated bid under the Act, fixing the interest payment dates, denominations and registration, transfer and exchange privileges of the bonds, accepting a bid for purchase of the bonds, designating a place and method of payment of the bonds and interest thereon, and making certain covenants with respect to the tax-free status thereof, establishing the substantial form of the bonds, authorizing execution and authentication of the bonds, covenanting to pay the principal of the interest on the bonds, and pledging the full faith, credit, and taxing power of the township to such purpose. Authorizing the execution of the documents for closing and the payment of the issuance expenses, declaring that the debt to be incurred is within the limitation imposed by the Act upon incurring of such debt by the township, authorizing and directing proper officers of the township to deliver the bonds only after specified approval as required of the Department of Community and Economic Development of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, setting forth certain covenants relating to the federal tax status of the bonds, providing for severability of provisions of the ordinance, providing for repeal of the ordinance or parts of the ordinances so far as the same shall be inconsistent, providing when this ordinance shall become effective. So be it. All right. That being said, we have Scott here to kick things off. Welcome, Scott. You're not going to ask me to repeat that.
No, I'm not.
Again, I know.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Excellent.
This evening, we have a presentation. We are asking the Commission to advertise this ordinance to move forward with the process for our 2021 bond issuance. With me today are Melissa Hughes and Kevin Reed. Melissa from PFM has many years of experience in the municipal bond market, and Kevin Reed has been working with the township since about 2014 through these various things. So you may see them as familiar faces, and they are here to present this information to all of us. Thank you.
Welcome.
I have handouts. Do you have a copy, or I could pass them out if you want a physical copy?
Absolutely. We'll take a physical copy. Thank you.
Sometimes I think that's helpful. It is. No, it's different. Yes. Ready to pick this up?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. And actually, it only works when it's close. So.
I totally understand that. We deal in all meeting environments, so we're adaptable. So 2 weeks ago, you heard from Jamie Schlesinger. We worked together and he gave a presentation. So this presentation, which I would just handed out, is fairly similar. I'm going to go over some of the similarities and differences, but it speaks together with the legal ordinance that Kevin has prepared to put all the authorizations in place to refund certain of your existing debt, basically all of it, and to potentially issue some new money. I understand that that's still a topic under consideration, exactly the amount that will be. But I think it's important to explain and go over exactly what a maximum parameters ordinance is and what it is. Because it can be pretty scary when you see that $15 million big number. So I'm going to start by jumping right to page 3, because that's really the meat of it. We'll focus most of our discussion on page 3, 4, and 6. So if you're looking at this handout in front of you, it has, I'm going to start in column 7. This is your existing debt service if you did nothing. You'll notice that in 2021, there is a very large payment that's due. That is reflective of the due date on the bond anticipation note from 2019. And you have payments of about $400,000 a year for 6 or 7 years here, and then it drops off. So we're proposing to refund for debt service savings the series of 2014 and 2018, and to refinance the series of 2019 into its long-term permanent financing. As I'm sure Jamie reminded you, in 2019, when we did that borrowing, it was a short-term borrowing with a 2-year term that we always intended to come back and obviously fix out the loan or spread it out over its anticipated full payment. So that's reflected here in column 10. In column 11, this reflects additional capital projects of approximately $1.6 million. And I'm going to have Scott here jump in and talk about what that's for. And then in column 12, it kind of aggregates it all together. You can see the anticipated debt service payments. And we're a little conservative. We are always conservative this early in the process. So Scott, I think now would be
the projects that are in consideration will be brought up again during budget time, but we were initially considering Bridgeview Terrace water replacement project, as well as the Kmart booster station and what we'll need there. Given that the environment for bond issuances right now with interest rates being where they're at, as things are at a rate that it's cheap to get money, it seems like a good time to be able to do this.
Does anyone have any questions about this part before I then move on to the kind of next part, which is what is the maximum parameters ordinance?
Yes. So, comparing it to the handout last time,
Yep.
last time column 4 was strictly where's dam.
Yes.
And I'll hold aside any discussion about that, just to say it was where's dam at like $700,000. And now we have these, 2 additional capital projects that Scott mentioned that are in this column 4,
Yes.
along with where's dam.
I understand that.
Okay, just to confirm that. Okay, thank you.
I have just one question.
Yes.
In column 12, so the total debt service for the first year would be this year, we estimated at $644,000, and then it goes up to, in 2023 to 2028, 1.1 million, we get back down to 8,030. Why did you anticipate that it would go from 600 up to a little over $1 million and back down to 8? Why the fluctuations there?
Good question. When you do a financing, the term of each piece of the debt needs to match the useful life of what you finance. So in other words, if you have a copy machine, I'm going to use a little bit of a silly example. If you have a copy machine isn't going to be good for 20 years. You can't finance that over. You finance that, you usually lease them, right, for 3 years or 5 years. That's how long they're good. So you have some existing debt, if you look at your 2014 and 2018, that will have payment drop-offs. So, those were financed according to those useful lives. And then the 2019 and the potential additional capital, those are amortized over 20 years because your new building, you that it has a reasonable useful life of at least 20 years. That is what a building, they're usually good for 30 to 40 years, but does that answer your question?
Thank you.
It's a good question.
I think I have another basic question. What is column 7?
What is, column 7 is your existing debt. So it flips, if you turn to the previous page, it flips to your total debt service there in column 5. So that's your existing 2014 note, your existing 2018 note, and your existing 2019.
Thank you.
So I'm flip ahead to page 6. This is the maximum parameters schedule. This schedule is contained within Kevin's ordinance. You'll notice that the principal amount here is $15 million. And if you look down column 3, you'll notice that the interest rate is 5%. So in order to comply with state law and not have to sell bonds on a day that you have a meeting, which you don't want to do because you want flexibility to enter the market on the right day, not a day that you just happen to have a meeting, you have to set out a maximum principal amount in every single year and a maximum coupon rate. So we have more than we think we're going to need in every single year to give ourselves the flexibility overall get the final debt service that I showed you in the final column of the previous page. So think about it this way. By state law, your overall debt service after the first 2 years needs to be level or decline. This is a tool that enables us to make sure that we can do that when we get to that day. Does anybody have any questions about that? Any questions? No? At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin to go over some elements of the ordinance, and then I'm going to go back in at the end.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be back before the board. My job today is to kind of walk you through. Some of you are familiar with the process, and some of you may not be as familiar of the ordinance process as it relates to debt. You're very familiar with the ordinance process. Data is here with regards to other matters, maybe less so with. Well, the first part is very simple. To any other ordinance, it ultimately needs the blessing of the Board of Commissioners. That's the first part of any authorization. This particular debt, as is all municipal debt, whether it's township, city, school district, you name it, I've been doing it for over 25 years, requires also authorization from the state. And that's why you might notice that the ordinance is rather long. It's not because I want to put multiple words on a particular piece of paper. It's not because I want to give you something to help you with any insomnia you might have at night. It's not for any of it. It's because there are certain state and federal requirements that have to be met. So part of the ordinance goes through the history of the old notes, 2014 note, 2018, and the 2019. Describe a little bit about what happened back then. Then we also have to have certain other provisions in there which comply with state law, and certain which require the federal. Municipalities have a benefit of being able to issue tax debt. Not everyone has that opportunity, but as a municipality you do. However, the federal government wants you to go through several hoops. So we have a lot of different provisions in the ordinance to describe those hoops. One other important thing, well, two other important things that I want to draw your attention to in the ordinance. Melissa discussed with you the fact that there's a maximum parameters, and she's 100% correct. In order for any municipality to issue any debt, there needs to be a schedule that shows the parameters. You and your board of commissioners, along with the finance team, which consists of BFM, my office, we work with your solicitor, your administration, and of course with you as well, is to make sure that there is a schedule which complies with, as Melissa just described. You can't have a schedule that has, $1 million a year, first year, 5 in the second year, and then at the end, it goes back up to $1 million. It has to be either level or declining after the first 2 years, hence the schedule that Lister and team put together. So that's an important component. That's one of the other parameters that there have been set within the body of the ordinance, the minimum savings level as it relates to refunding. You're doing the refunding for the purposes, one of the purposes under the act is to realize savings. So there's a minimum savings level within this ordinance of $100,000. That's not the maximum, it's a floor, it's not a ceiling. Depends on how the market goes, but that's a parameter that's being set. So if the pricing would yield $75,000 of savings, and Melissa and her team would come to me and say, well, can we do this? I'd say, yeah, because the authorization is, the floor is $100,000. Certainly, if she comes to me and says it's $150,000, I'm saying absolutely go for it. So that's another important component of this ordinance. The other thing that it does is it authorizes certain officers and officials to take certain action. If you move this through to advertising, and if you move it forward at a subsequent meeting, then there's certain action that has to be taken, not only with filing the Department of Community and Economic Development, but then there's a lot of people involved in that. Not only my office and the solicitor's office, but you have the investment bankers, you have various other folks such as the rating agencies, et cetera, that become involved. So there's quite a bit of paperwork and documentation that has to be done with regards to any finance. That's true for any municipality. With that, I will stop and pause to see if there are any initial questions at this point.
Any questions for Kevin? Kevin, I have a question. You mentioned a minimum savings level of $100,000. Is that over the life of the loan, which is 30 years?
So the minimum savings would be at the time of the pricing. So once it gets priced, and Melissa can talk a little bit about pricing dynamics. Once it gets priced, it actually has to show a benefit to the township of $100,000. I'm not sure how you're showing it upfront or if you've done that over years.
So let's go back to page 3. That's a good question. So the minimum savings target that Kevin is referencing is in relation to the combined series of 2014 and series of 2018. And you can see there, we're taking the savings over the life of just those pieces. So behind the scenes, there's like backup pages, lots of math on them. And so we're breaking out each one so we can show what's allocable to each piece. So it will just, the savings will just be over the years where those bonds have payments. So in this case, 22 to 30 and then 22 to 28. So not over the full life.
The amounts you're referring to are savings amounts then in those columns.
Correct. And then you can see there's a little bit of this savings at the end of the 2014 one. We're doing that because we're making the whole issue level. You ended up, it was a bank loan and you didn't quite use the whole amount. Makes it cleaner. Does anybody have any other general questions or questions for Kevin? Okay. I'm a question master, so I understand.
I know I have some other questions, but I don't think they're right now.
If it's okay, I'm going to progress to talking about time limit. That's on page 4. So the action for tonight is simply to authorize advertisement of this ordinance. So assuming that we got the green light for that, then on August 18th, so about 2 weeks from now, the commissioners could consider the ordinance itself. Everything has to be advertised according to certain rules under that local government act that Kevin referenced. Rules are just a little bit different and more robust than your general sunshine act. So assuming you authorize advertisement, we would do the ordinance approval. We would go through the rating process. We would get the rating back. We would complete the preliminary official statement. That's a book about this thick that talks about the township and its demographics and economics, and just helps potential investors understand who you are. And then in kind of the end of September, we would be in a position to price the bonds and lock in rates. And then by the end of October, we would be in a position to settle. And remember, a lot of this timeline is driven by the timeline for the repayment on your bond anticipation note. That has a repayment date of December 1, 2020. So trying to get this done in advance of that. Any further questions for me? Any questions? Okay.
That's all we have.
That's all. All right. Are there any other general questions? Consider any action this evening from the board?
Yeah, I just have a few. So I think this is for Scott. Could you go, the two extra projects, you said Bridgeview Water, and what was the other one?
Bridgeview Terrace and the Kmart booster station. The Kmart booster station was brought to the board several months ago. It went out to bid, just for everyone. It went out to bid and the bid came back very high. And so we decided not to go through this year, but to explore other options. This is one of those options we would like to explore. We're certainly not asking for permission to explore that option tonight, or any sort of nature of that, or any other thing. We're just asking to advertise the ordinance in the way that it needs to be advertised. So this isn't in any way permission to go ahead with the Kmart booster station. It makes the most financial sense with the interest rates being where they're at to look at that during budget time.
So roughly, what are the amounts for that? These two must total like $1 million.
I know Bridgeview Terrace is gonna be in the budget for $650,000 for next year. And the Kmart number, Mike, I can't give you a solid number on that. We have a structural engineer that's looking at the building, and then we'll be able to assess that further once we get that report. If I'm not mistaken, the previous bid for a new building came back at 1.2 million. And that's what made us look at a different route of trying to lower the cost of it.
If I can jump in, how much did we budget in this year's budget for the Kmart station?
This year was 200,000. Yeah, but there was other money that was budgeted in prior years to make more available. We would have had a total of 800,000 total for it, but that still wasn't enough money when the bids came back. So that's why 1.2 was a lot of money. So that's why we're looking at a structural engineer to look if we could rehab the building instead of having to build a whole new building.
So this is probably a combination maybe for Melissa. I'd like you to connect page 3 with page 6. So I understand your explanation of page 6, which is you're putting for like a maximum possible debt of $15 million.
Yep.
And if I look on page 3, I expect, because there's detail here, I would expect to see a number that's less than the 15 million.
Yes.
What's that key number on this page?
I'm going to direct your attention. So I'm going to say number I have said before. Column 5. So column 5, we just kind of split out each purpose. If you read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the amount of bond proceeds or par plus any premium or discount. So we think that the total borrowing is gonna serve purposes of about 14.2 million. So the delta between the purposes and kind of that cushion to get it structured right is about 800. So I would consider this a fairly tight, meaning that it is pretty in line with, there's not a lot of, as much wiggle room as sometimes.
Okay, all right, thanks for that. So if I come back to column 4, just doing the math in my head.
Yep.
Right, so it's $1.6 million.
Yep.
And it includes Ware's Dam, which at the last meeting, that was 0.7. That leaves $0.9 million for the other projects.
For the other projects, and then a little bit for cost efficiency. Not a whole lot, because you get efficiencies with doing it all at once.
It leaves, like, if I'm doing this right, it leaves like $900,000 for the other projects, and the numbers Scott and Herb gave are over that by a fair amount, by like $1 million.
Yeah, we can certainly go up to that $15 million and finance the costs from the bond issuance. So the entirety of the project does not need to be financed from the bond proceeds. So this is just to get us to a maximum borrowing. So we could rewrite it to 16, 17 million, but 15 is the number I like.
So, picking up on what you just said, if I come at this from a different direction, right? I think that's what you're saying. So to say like, you've looked at all the factors here, and you think it is advisable to advertise this as if we may finance up to 15 million, right? Then we know what the previous debt is, right? And then column 4, we can kind of back calculate what projects we can pay for, right? Because right now it includes Ware's Dam at $700,000, and this board has made no decision whether we're proceeding with Ware's Dam project or not. So is that a way to look at it? In other words, you take $15 million, subtract columns 1, 2, 3, and then column 4 is the remainder of projects you could fund with this debt.
That's correct. And so that decision, though, is a board decision. So whether or not we spend the money on Ware's Dam versus, the Bridgeview project or another project, I just want the funds available in the event that the board does decide to go with the Ware's Dam project and go with the referendum or go with the other capital projects that we have. It just makes the most financial sense to do it through the bond issuance and get the best interest rate that we possibly could. If we're going to have to spend the money anyway one day, that was the rationale behind it.
And could you, backing up the math, you said you're comfortable with 15 million. I have a lot of confidence in you. So could you tell us in words how you arrive at the 15 million?
So the 15 million, yeah. So our borrowing base that we're allowed to have as a township, if I'm not mistaken, is 250% of our general fund revenues in one given year. That puts us at about $40 million. So that's the maximum amount that South Whitehall is allowed to have. I don't want to put us in a financial position where we're short of cash here for projects to occur, but at the same time, I don't want to go much higher than where we're already at. So that's where 15 came into play. So 15 out of 40 puts us under, it's about 40% of our total borrowing rate. I don't want to go much higher than that. And I certainly wouldn't go much lower than that, given the fact that we're in an environment where rates are low.
Now's the time to use somebody else's cash.
And from guidance that the Fed has issued in terms of future rates, we may see those go up.
I think Kevin and I have the same thought. But he's a lawyer, so no concern.
Just one thing to kind of complement that discussion, just so the commissioners are aware. There's a federal requirement, and it is stated within the ordinance that these would not be arbitrage loans. And part of that component is that for any new money, any capital projects, you're required to spend those proceeds within 3 years. Okay? That is a mandate. Now, technically, the mandate is 85% of the proceeds. I always like to instruct clients how to look at it as 100%, because like PFM, we tend to be conservative. I think you need to think in that mindset. So you have to spend all of those new money proceeds within that year. So whatever, within those 3 year time, so whatever the commissioners may decide with regards to any capital projects, what they may be, etc., be mindful of that. That affords you the tax exempt status. That is a requirement. We want to keep these tax exempt and not have to revert to tax.
Kind of a pretty simple way. So are they project specific? You have to identify the projects on the front end and spend in that particular project only, or are we allowed in those 3 years? For example, if we chose not to do the booster station, spend the money on a road project, are we allowed to put into an account?
So different municipalities approach it differently. I highly recommend that at least 1 or 2 of the projects are specific, and then it is not uncommon to also have language which indicates other capital projects. That way, there is some delineation as to what projects commissioners may be interested in. And then 2, there's an opportunity, because sometimes, in this instance, it didn't happen, but sometimes you may have instances where bids come in lower than expected. You still have to spend those proceeds. And typically, there may be some other capital projects that would be pressing and important, particularly municipalities do so. So, a roundabout answer, it is a discretionary matter for the commissioners. My recommendation is to at least identify 1 or 2 of those projects and also have the language of other capital projects.
Thank you.
This language would be where?
The language would be in the ordinance itself.
It is.
Presently, there is language in there that identifies at this point in time, and once again, it's subject to what the wishes of the commissioners would be. Right now, it indicates Wares Dam and other capital projects. You could redesignate that as you so chose, and then my office would be the scrivener and put it.
So just to clarify, the only project we identified here was approximately 700,000. So the rest of that money, $1 million, is not based on support.
Not yet.
Now, at the present time, you certainly can, once again, amend that language, direct my office to put in what the commissioners would like. We do that.
What this allows us to do by using the bond issuance to pay for capital projects allows us to take monies that would have been spent that we already have for capital projects, but rather put that money to the fiscal stability fund.
And you can't just take the bond proceeds and put it in the fiscal stability fund, no good for tax purposes.
Which would help us increase our fiscal stability percentage.
Correct. I have a fund balance policy that will be arriving to the board after tomorrow's meeting with the finance committee, and after the results of the audits show up, that will be around the ballpark of 20% of general fund revenues. So in the current budgetary plan to move monies that would have been spent on capital projects into the fiscal stability fund, the goal is to arrive at that 20%.
Sorry, one more question. So I know that when the building renovation was undertaken back end of 2019, the financing board, there was a transfer from our fiscal stability into that fund to get the building going. It was supposed to be. Is that also what we're talking about, or is that money already designated to go back into the fund?
That is the money that we are talking about.
I'm a little confused. So the $1 million that as a citizen listening to those meetings, it seemed like it was being transferred out and just gonna come back, so we're actually gonna be financing that additional million
No,
in a way.
no, we're not allowed to finance that.
Well, in essence, the $1 million that we would have used in the budget, put there.
I'm not sure what the original 2019 provisions were, but I can speak to that with the original bond issuance.
I don't know the specific language, but the money was, like Diane had referred to, taken from fiscal stability to put towards that, and then it was going to be paid back once.
Right. And there's no resolution that we had that said that we could pay that money
No, I don't know if it was.
back. Okay, it wasn't.
I don't believe it was, no.
But the goal is through this finance plan, the goal is to be able to free up funds that we may use.
Any other questions from the board?
Who wrote the ordinance? I assume that was good.
And just a general question, you talked about bringing up again, budget season, Richard Terrace and Kmart Booster Window, can we expect to begin as a board understanding where we are with our budget, or our forecast for next year, because we're talking about our substantial amount of money.
Yep.
We have absolutely no idea what other capital projects are looming out there, what's the picture for the
Yep,
next 5 years.
I can have input to the board by the August 19th finance committee. So I think I did that at the last finance committee with the schedule of events for the budget season.
But we need to decide on how much we're going to approve on this at our next meeting, which will be before,
I will get that to the board with
well, as long as it's before our next meeting.
So could you please restate that? The words don't jump off here. Our decision on how much to finance is at the August 18 meeting.
that is correct.
To be clear, we need to adopt an ordinance at the August 18th meeting. We can have a couple more weeks to decide the final amount. This would set the maximum amount that we could do. We could bring it in from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because we're not going to go issue $1.6 million of new money if you tell us to issue $1 million of new money. We can always bring it in. We can't bring it in.
Okay. I have a comment for the board. I'm not expecting an answer tonight, but it's something I think we need to consider. I think I made a similar comment at this meeting. So here we have $700,000 for Weir's Dam restoration. We're proceeding with including it in financing. In 2 weeks, we're gonna make a decision on the financing at least the max level. We haven't made any decision to proceed with a Weir's Dam restoration project. So to me, there's like a reconciliation that we all need to come to. Either, seems to me, either we're gonna include Weir's Dam in the financing without agreeing that we're proceeding with the project, or we're gonna include it in the financing because we're making a decision to proceed with that project, which actually we don't have any active discussion around that at the moment, and that's only 2 weeks away. So I mean, beyond that, I'm just raising it as, here's something in front of us that we need to consider individually and collectively. I hope that makes sense.
When we did vote to proceed with, we were basically for price of the renovations to approve it.
Well, let's just compare.
Grant submitted to DCNR in the amount of, I believe, $250,000, which we will be hearing from probably later this year. Typically, it's around Thanksgiving, in between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Sometimes earlier, sometimes later.
Yeah.
And
So
what's
my-
our, one second, Attorney Zeta, what's our legal requirement? I thought once the referendum passed, we were legally required at that point, we agreed to go into debt for up to whatever the dollar amount, 600 or something.
No, that's not correct. The referendum provided an authorization for the board to move ahead with financing if you choose to do so. So you're not obligated to commit to Rares Dam. That's that issue. But let me, if I might, ask a question of Melissa that maybe gets to the heart of this. If I understand correctly, the 1.6 million additional capital that's been allocated for Rares Dam and the 2 booster station projects, and I think you indicated could potentially include language allowed to use for other capital projects. If all 3 of those and the 4th item, other capital projects, were included, the only really existing requirement then in spending this money is that in the next 2 to 3 years, 3 years, 2 to 3 years, 3 years, the board has to use $1.6 million for capital projects. Whether it's Rares Dam or something else is really irrelevant.
That is a correct statement with one caveat. Those capital projects kind of in aggregate have to have a useful life of 20 years. So it can't be, in my silly example, the copier, right? It needs to be something, that's going to be a.
And then to add to that, if I heard Scott correctly, there are additional funds needed to complete, even if you look at Rares Dam and 2 booster stations, the 1.6 million is not enough. But the township has been saving money, maybe you have to budget additional monies, but basically what this is doing is saying, because the interest rates are low, we would finance 1.6 million for those kinds of projects, and you can use it as a board however you choose in the next 3 years. So the real question is, as a board, you think you're going to have $1.6 million or more in capital projects over the next 3 years? The answer is yes. It seems like this makes sense.
So, yeah, the kind of test that the IRS asks you to think about it is, do you have reasonable expectations that within 3 years of settlement, you can spend 85% of the borrowing term? Reasonable expectations. Which means, like, give us a list of projects that you know about, which you have done.
So
I would just like to interject. I don't want the language of the ordinance to distract from what we're asking for tonight, just in the sense of what this structure is for. If there's another discussion that needs to be take place about, the Rares Dam project, or permission has not been obtained for that project to go ahead, I'd love to do that at another time if I can ask for that. But in terms of the language of the specific ordinance, it makes the most sense to just include that as one of the options if the board so chooses to move forward with that.
So I raised the question, Solicitor Zader's thinking and explanation makes a lot of sense, and what you just said. So I think it all pulls together and hangs together for a path forward.
Any other questions? Anybody? Any from the public?
Well, this is just a question, Dave, and, being that it's over 10
Dave,
million
you gotta come up to the mic.
Oh.
They can't hear you on the Zoom and.
my question is, because it's over $10 million, is the bank qualified? Does that affect the South Whitehall Township?
It's a good question. So for the benefit of those who aren't familiar, if issuers issue less than $10 million of new money in any given calendar year, you can get, beyond just the tax exemption, you can get a second level financial benefit called a bank qualification status. Basically, banks are like, hey, the IRS says, hey, banks, you need to pay attention to the little guy too, and gives them a special tax benefit, so the interest rates are lower, and there's generally the very most favorable call feature again. This will be more than 10 million, whether we include the new money or not. So it will be issued on a non-bank qualified basis, so that is not the very lowest interest rate available. but still very low. And that the fact that it's already going to be issued on a non-bank qualified basis kind of speaks to the fact that it makes the most sense to include the new money with it. Because if you're already going to be non-bank qualified, let's get the most efficiency possible within that structure. Does that answer your question?
Any other questions from the public? One in the back?
Hi, I'm Andrea Sarge. So what follow-up does the loan, the money, require? How often, money trail, paperwork, because I know our township does not have a good history with audits and following the money trail, so.
There's a whole variety of things required to be compliant. And there's kind of two different pieces of, not legislative law that speaks to this. First, the IRS has rules. The bonds have to be kept in, so any of the new money. There's going to be most of this that's going to go out and it's going to pay out the existing debt, and that's going to be gone on day one. Be left with the new ones. That's all. The new money has to be kept in a separate clean account, and it has to be tracked by somebody who's like a rebate agent, because it's really a specific term. But basically, what they do is they make sure that the account that the money's in doesn't earn too much interest. There's like all sorts of rules to be taxed. So they don't look at like, is the money spent on the right thing? They don't say like, did you buy a dump truck? We're going to buy a dump truck. They look and say, are you complying with these tax rules? So that's one part. So you're kind of follow the money question. So there will be somebody who looks at that in your, periodically over the life of the issue. And then kind of secondarily, the township will have reporting requirements. The SEC requires that issuers, like the township, provide certain financial information on an ongoing basis. And there's a website, it's called ENMA, the woman's name, emma.msrb.org, that you'll be, a year from now, be able to go on and look at, and they'll have to upload certain documents. Every year, it's basically, audits, budgets, and then, whatever else we kind of negotiate with the underwriter. That's always a little bit of a negotiation. But usually it's some demographic information about the township. Helping somebody who's not from South Whitehall understand what is South Whitehall. Answer your question?
No, because being a citizen, I've been born and raised here, and I'm just, I've been in the background for a while, and, I know there's things that go on that should go on, and so this makes me really nervous. It's a lot of money, and if we can't get a simple audit every year done, this money makes me really nervous, making sure that it gets spent right.
Yeah, that's reasonable. It's going to be on the elected and appointed officials of the township to make sure that happens. We're going to be on them to make sure they do that disclosure that I talked about. But we, our role is not to check every check that they write. Just not what we do. Make sense?
Can I ask a follow-up question about the bank $10 million under? So our 2014 note looks like there's a 2.3% interest rate. 2018 note has a 4.06 interest rate. And the example you used was a max of 5, and I know you can't predict where our interest will land, but certainly the 2.31 is a pretty nice rate. Is there a benefit, or can we also in tandem, in taking the one path you've already laid out, the second path, let the current 18 and 14 notes stay and use the $9 million to get one of those loans that would be under 10? And,
Yeah.
And is there merit to doing that because those other loans are going to
we
out fairly soon?
Yeah, we considered that. You're still going to end up net ahead for doing this. It makes more sense to include the refinancing than to not include.
Even if the interest rate goes up?
Yeah, because I got it. This is the part that I know about. Yeah, so we did consider that. Whenever we develop a plan that is non-bank qualified, then we go back and look at it and say, can we make it more efficient? Are there efficiencies to be gained? And because the refinances are efficient enough, it makes sense to do that. Yeah. It's a good question to ask. When I literally go back to every plan that's not my fault, I'm gonna be like, how can we make it speak it?
Thank you. Any other questions? We have any in chat? All right.
I was just gonna add, if I may, we would have to pay these fine people twice if we were to do a whole nother one.
All right, that being said, with no questions, we have an ordinance, for request to advertise. I'm not gonna read the whole thing, authorizing and directing the issuance of its general obligation bond, series 2021, and the maximum principal aggregate amount of 15 million. So, do I hear said motion to advertise? We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Kelly to advertise. For their second.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Wall. Can I have a roll call vote, please, Randy?
Commissioner Wall.
Yes.
Commissioner Seton. Commissioner Long. Yes. Commissioner Kelly.
Aye.
And Commissioner Morgan.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you so much, Kevin, Melissa, Scott, and Joe. Great description there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Next this evening, for consideration and possible action, we have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of South Whitehall Township, Lehigh County, to approve the terms of a separation agreement for our township manager, Renee Fickle, which is allowable through her contract. So are there any questions or comments regarding that resolution for consideration this evening from the board? Any from the public? And
Yeah,
to the mic.
I do. You may have answered the one. You said this is per her contract,
Per her contract.
so this is in her contract.
Correct.
Okay. That probably answers most of the questions. What are the amounts that we're talking about?
The amounts we're talking about as far as for her separation agreement?
Yes.
That information without being voted on first, is that available?
I defer to the solicitor. If it's not voted on.
And your thought is because it's personnel matter?
Yes.
It's taxpayer funded money, correct? Right, am I correct on that? So shouldn't we know how much we're going to pay?
I'm asking the question only because it's a personnel matter on the timing of providing the information. So I have no problem providing it, but I just want to make sure from a legal standpoint, we can do that before it's even voted on.
The answer would be yes, you can.
Okay. She would receive 26 weeks severance as a part of her contract.
Has she given notice that she's looking to leave?
This was a discussion mutually agreed upon.
So she is leaving, you're saying?
Well, with the severance agreement, that's what the severance agreement
I
is.
know what a severance agreement is.
Yes.
So she's given notice that she's leaving and she's requesting her severance of 26 weeks.
Amy, I'll defer to you on specifically how to answer that because of the agreement.
Right, I mean, the specific discussions would be a personnel matter.
That's executive session item, I'm aware of that. Could I receive a copy of her contract tomorrow? Is that public information?
It certainly is public information.
It's been voted on, yes.
Correct.
The contract has been voted.
Not-
She's an employee of the
We're
township.
talking about the contract.
Oh, the employee contract?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, then I'll get that up tomorrow. Thank you.
All right, any other questions from the public? Mr. Hodges?
Sorry. Robert Hodges, 1707.
Robert Hodges, crossing. You don't understand what this is. Explain what we're talking about.
The mutually agreed upon severance agreement for separation.
So again, meaning that she is leaving, or
That's what the separation, if agreed upon,
and this is
constitutes.
everything this is already in the contract that was signed previously.
The ability to have a separation agreement is built into her contract, yes, which is approved.
So I don't understand what we're doing here. If it's already in the contract, why is it just not going to go through this process?
Well, the contract contemplates an additional agreement in exchange for the severance. So for consideration this evening is that additional agreement in exchange for the severance.
I don't. Sorry. I don't know why. I don't know.
We're working on it.
So I'm sorry, she's working under a contract, which stipulates the agreement of when she leaves, and you have really to add something now, or change something, or what?
The provisions in the employment agreement contemplate an agreement that the parties would sign upon the separation, and that the parties would enter into an agreement. So it's the agreement that's referred to in the employment agreement is what we're discussing.
Okay, so when she signed the contract said, when I leave, we'll come with some agreement in the board and her. That's what I said.
The employment agreement is a document that has the provisions that are written. So I'm not characterized as a provision.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't know. She already has a contract. I don't understand what it is that we're deciding. Yes, that is.
Within her contract allows the ability to be considered mutually agreed upon by this board, a severance agreement upon her separation. And that's what we're voting on this evening. The amount that we're voting on is already written into her contract as an opportunity, I shouldn't use the word opportunity, as a mutually agreed upon by vote by this board, allowable separation.
26 weeks a typical severance? Or is that less than usual, more than usual?
I can't answer that question.
We've had other severance packages within the township. All of them I can't speak about, because some of them I'm not sure I'm at liberty to speak about, but it is part of the typical package.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Any questions in the chat, Tracy? All right, that being said, in front of us for consideration then, do I hear a motion to move forward with the resolution of the Board of Commissioners of South Whitehall Township to approve the terms of a separation agreement for Township Manager Renee Pickle? We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Sutton. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Long. Can I have a roll call vote, please, Randy?
Sure. Commissioner Wall?
Yes.
Commissioner Sutton?
Yes.
Commissioner Long?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Nay.
And Commissioner Morgan?
Yes. Motion carries. I'd just like to note that Township Manager Renee Pickle will be leaving effective August 31st, 2021. And we personally want to thank her for her years of service to our community and wish her well in future endeavors. The Board of Commissioners has initiated the process to identify a successor and will name an acting township manager prior to Renee's departure. So we wish Renee well and all the best. All right. Next this evening, for consideration and possible action, we have a resolution granting preliminary final approval to a minor plan entitled 3926 Limekiln Road. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is an application to subdivide the property located at 3926 Lime Kiln Road. For those of you who don't know where that is the land on the south side of the Lime Kiln Road, Warfield Road intersection. It's about 68 acres, and it also includes the Novak land, shall I say, former Novak. The plan tonight, basically, for some background, that 68 acres has not only landfill, but it's got 2 farmhouses on it, which generally is not permitted under zoning, but the farmhouses have been there forever. So this plan proposes to separate out 2 farmhouses from each other and then leave the landfill and some other land as the residual parcel. So 1 lot into 3. Subject property is zoned rural residential 2, and Anthony and Janelle Hanna are the owners and applicants. Tonight we have Mr. Hanna and Mark Bradbury from Mark Bradbury Griffith here to present the plan. So without any further ado, gentlemen.
The floor is yours.
Good evening. After quite a bit of time working with the Maximus, who are the main caregivers, or I'd say overseers, for the landfill over numerous years. Landfill now, I believe, is in its final stage, or has finally been remediated, and has changed hands. It originally belonged to the Novak family. And Tony Hanna and Janelle purchased it. And after they purchased it, we started talking with Jeffrey Seibel from the Maximus about subdivision possibilities. So going through their legal department and working with South Whitehall Township, we devised a plan to remove the 2 homes that are there from the large parcel of the landfill area. The entire area is under an environmental covenant, which gives the Maximus to continually monitor the area, maintain the fences, patrol to make sure that nothing is happening. And there's a separation of 2 areas. There's a covenant that goes with the entire property, and then there's an environmental restriction area where the actual cap is where the remediation took place. Our lots are completely removed from the environmental restriction area, and will have no effect on that now in the future. We did get some variances for some side yards and for lot size. It's almost a natural subdivision. It's not creating any new lots. Basically just taking the 2 original houses and making them into separate lots.
Any questions from the commissioners or Mark on this particular resolution for consideration?
You mentioned that you requested variances for the yes.
I just had one follow-up. You mentioned that the entire area is under an environmental covenant still. What does that mean for the future then?
What it means is that although those lots are subdivided, there's a fence that goes around the environmental restriction area. There's a 15-foot easement outside that fence that will be on these residential lots so that the group or the Maximus can come in and maintain that fence without disturbing anything on, ripping up ground or having a contractor come in and damage the cap. It also gives them access to come across, because the only access is from Limeville Road. It gives them permission to access the landfill at any time they see fit, even though it's owned by Mr. Hanna, they'll perpetually have the right to come in and inspect.
Any other questions? Any questions from the public? Any chat? All right, thank you. That being said, I hear a motion this evening, grant preliminary final approval to a minor plan entitled 3926 Limestone Road. We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Kelly. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Long. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Commissioner Walker? Yes. Commissioner Seton? Yes. Commissioner Long? Yes. Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
And Commissioner Morgan?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. All right. Next, we have, we already did our motions, under correspondence and information items.
Tori, I believe we have a resolution.
Oops, did I miss one? Yes, I did. I apologize. I did. Thank you, Scott, for saying that. It was tucked in there. Going backwards, we have this evening a resolution for consideration amending resolution 2015-29, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of South Whitehall Township, Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, pursuant to the Local Tax Enabling Act 5369.4.101, appointing the business privilege tax. Scott. Thank you for the line.
Thank you. Recently, the Finance Department has undergone some strategic internal changes, roles, and responsibilities with its employees. One of the areas in which changes occurred is in the realm of the business privilege tax. As you know, we as South Whitehall Township have a business privilege tax that is levied under the local tax enabling. This act permits first-class townships to levy, assess, and collect taxes as the person's transactions, occupations, privileges, subjects, and personal property within the limits of a political subdivision. The Act also provides that any political subdivision is authorized to provide by ordinance or resolution for the creation or designation of a tax, or, in this case, the appointment and compensation of a public employee or public or private agency for the assessment and collection of taxes imposed under the Act. Based on the above information, I am respectfully submitting for your consideration the attached resolution appointing Diana Valkova as the Business Privilege Tax Administrator. This proposed resolution is consistent with the previous resolutions appointing an employee as Business Privilege Tax.
Scott? Any questions for Scott on this particular resolution for consideration this evening from the board?
I do have a question. So we've had business privilege tax administrator in the past.
Right.
How long have you been around one?
How's that?
How long have you been without one?
We have not. We currently have one as it stands until you move on this. The nature and change that has occurred in the finance department is merely to move people to the areas in which their skills and abilities and desire to work in those areas.
So is this a budget neutral change in staffing in that department? Thank you.
Is this individual's sole responsibility?
No, it's not. There's a plethora of responsibilities that she also handles. She was very instrumental in the credit card project that we implemented recently. And so, but this is one of the things that she does. Mostly around April and May, that's the biggest concentration of that work due to the nature of the business privilege tax.
So just out of curiosity, if it's just a interdepartmental change, what is the reason that we would have to take action on it?
Mr. Zader, I will refer you on this.
There are certain positions under various statutes that would require appointment by the board. Most common and classic example would be a zoning officer. But based on historically the way this position has been handled in the township, that's why this is.
Any other questions from the board? And from the public? And chat? All right, that being said, we have a resolution, we're a motion for consideration to appoint Diana Valkova to our Business Privilege Tax Administrator. We have a motion from Commissioner Kelly. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Walk, and I will roll call.
Commissioner Walker? Yes. Commissioner Sitt? Yes. Commissioner Long?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Deanna, for us. All right. Okay, I didn't miss anything then, did I? Good. Resolutions. All right. So next, under correspondence and information items, I will just note some upcoming meetings. Tuesday, August 10th at 6 p.m. at Parkland High School, we will have the continuation of the Premier Center Luxury Apartments public hearing conditional use. On Monday, August 16th at 6 p.m., we will have our Green Advisory Council meeting. That's it, over Bridge again.
Correct, Bridge Park Pavilion 1.
Pavilion 1. I'd also like to remind the public, we still have some vacancies on boards and commissions. Spread the news, it's on our website. Civil Service Commission, one vacancy, it's an alternate position. Landscape Shade Tree Commission, 2 vacancies. Park and Rec Board, and those are school district vacancies, I believe. And then one vacancy as an alternate position on the zoning board. So that's all I had under boards and commissions. Anybody else have anything?
Commissioner, I just want to follow up on the Parkview meeting on August 10th. The website shows that it's 6 p.m. to 11 p.m., but we had agreed to 6 p.m. to 10 p.m.
We can change that.
Yeah, I think we have a hard stop at 10, so we'll get.
Right,
Yeah, absolutely.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yes, sir.
I have the Finance Committee report, which is essentially the same as the last 2 meetings. However, we're meeting with the auditor tomorrow, and the auditor will present the draft 2016 to 19 audit reports to the committee. These reports will include the audit opinion with the findings and recommendations. This is the first time that the Finance Committee will have any discussion with the auditor about the audited finances. The 2018 to 2019 audit financial reports have not been submitted to us yet. So we haven't been given the opportunity to review these reports prior to the meeting tomorrow. But presumably they will be ready for us to review at the meeting.
All right. Questions? Anything in the chat, Tracy?
No.
All right. Randy, do you have any new information? We have nothing under correction and discussion. Do we have anything new under where stand?
Nothing new to report on our stand tonight.
This is now the opportunity for a non-agenda item for courtesy of the board. Do I have anybody this evening? What we have things coming up with that?
Dean Bradley, 2432 West Congress Street. I just wanted to follow up on a comment you made earlier about that you were working on it. Again, I would like to reiterate that the sound system, particularly for speakers, is very disappointing and quite frankly disrespectful for the folks in the audience. You have a great sound system in front of you. We can hear everybody on the podium with the exception of Commissioner Sutton, who has a tendency to talk into his lap. So we can hear you, but nobody back here can hear many of the speakers. So again, I would urge you to urgently work on improving that. And secondly, I've been to 2 meetings now where I've sat with members of the audience and listened to people make presentations off of slides that are available to the board members, but none of the information is available to us as the public. So we've sat here, for example, for 45 minutes this evening, listening to people going back and forth on page 3 or page 5 or column 6 or column 7 while we're twiddling our thumbs and you guys are able to follow it. Again, I would urge you, you have screens, you have the ability to put information up. If somebody is coming and they have a presentation, ask them to bring a flash drive so it can be projected on the screen so that we can all see what you're seeing. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that comment, and I don't know, I just had some more discussion on that, because I know that the first time we've heard that sound issues. I don't know what we need to do as a board. I appreciate your comment about the slide for the public. Is there something, an action we need to take tonight to?
Dave Manhart's on vacation this week. I know he can better explain this, but I do know he's been looking into the microphones. I can follow up with him when he gets back on Monday. I do hope we have those here for the August 18th meeting. But yes, we are aware of the technical difficulties and we are actively working on it.
The other issue is that the video recording of it is not a video. Shows blank screen pretty much. I went to go look at one of those prior meetings, so it's not what it used to be. Some of those meetings.
The go-to?
Yeah, if you want to take a look. I don't know if that's something we can look at.
Let me make a note here.
The recording to.
Randy, these mics, Dean made a good point, these mics are,
Very clear.
they're great, they're fantastic. Maybe we can get one, quite honestly, even if we don't have it done before, is there a way to pull this mic up and put it out there?
We're working with CSI to see if we can hardwire one into the
Yeah.
and then to get another couple handhelds as well for on that side as well as the Saturday.
Yeah, and even if in the meantime, it doesn't, don't get the hardwire in, I don't know, maybe this one, if the port's long enough and it reaches, but yeah, I mean, I think we have some options, so maybe we can. Okay, great, thank you.
No problem. And just to follow up, Commissioner Kelly, you said the video recording on the website is not.
Yeah, you don't see any video at all. Got it.
Mr. Hodges.
Again, Robert Hodges, 7 Crossing. I think, Leo, I've heard in the past that the township is going to be receiving more COVID relief money or has received more COVID relief money. It's been decided how that's going to be spent and who will be making those decisions or has made those decisions.
Scott can report out on that.
Hello, everyone. The South Whitehall Township has received in the amount of $1,044,000 and change as part 1 of 2 of another $1,044,000 and change, which is in a bank account specifically set aside in its own specific fund for the purposes of the American Rescue Plan. Those decisions in terms of how the money that will be made or will be spent will be made at budget time, and a plan will be put forward in terms of what the best use is. So we're currently now looking into options. There's some specific language that we have to adhere to and 4 primary specific qualifications of the money. And with the other township and municipality looking into this as well, we have to at least consider what everyone else is going to do and which prices are going to be driven up. So that's discussions that will take place at budget time and in the future.
And Scott, what's the expiration date to use that money? I know we've got a window.
I believe we're allowed to use, we have to use the funds by December 31st, 2024.
24, so we've got a little bit of a long.
If we have open purchase orders, we can stretch it out to 2026 if the projects are underway. But 2024 is the end cap.
And those projects that are agreed upon by the township and the board have to fall in a certain criteria. There are criteria for spending.
Correct. The most broad use of it, of the funds, there's a calculation that we have already built for the township, which is called the lost revenue calculation. Those assumptions, if you don't have audited financial statements, are built on internal financials. Tomorrow, I have to change those assumptions because we will have audited financials. But that number allows the use of that funding for broad general expenses. So just FYI, we can spend that on road paving, we can spend that on, example, that's the example. Other uses include water, sewer, broadband, infrastructure, and then there's some provisions for hazard pay, some other things. So we're monitoring what other townships are doing, we're monitoring what other cities are looking at doing and how they're purchasing money. Because in short, there's always somebody out there who's going to spend it in a way they shouldn't. And there's an example of that goes forward. There was a city, I believe in Michigan, that decided to give their entire top echelon like 20 grand or something. And that came back and they got in trouble for that. So I want to see what's occurring out there be able to monitor the situation and be able to have those discussions at budget time.
Scott, so two other basic points. We got this 1 point something million now, and in about a year or in a year, we get another 1 million, right?
That's correct.
And maybe the other thing to note is it in any given year, we should not spend more than $750,000, otherwise we trigger something.
So the way that federal expenditures work, or expenditures of federal funds work, are that from an audit perspective, if the township decides to spend over $750,000 in a given year, that triggers what's called a single audit. Those can be expensive. Those can be, an additional burden that reduces the amount of money that we're able to spend on the projects that we want to spend. Not to mention the amount of extra work that would create for us. So we're looking at, in terms of the plan, if we can spend the money by 2024, it's almost $2.1 million total. And if we did 700,000 each year, that would make the most obvious sense.
Any other questions or comments courtesy of the floor? Anything in chat? All right. I'd like to note that our invoices and purchasing requisitions have been reviewed by the township manager and the director of finance. We do need a motion to authorize that our checks be issued to pay our bills as tabulated. Like your said motion. We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Kelly. Do I hear a second? Second from Commissioner Seton. Can I have a roll call vote, please, Randy?
Commissioner Walker?
Yes.
Commissioner Set?
Yes.
Commissioner Long?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
And Commissioner Morgan?
Yes, motion carries. We have no executive session planned for this evening. Do I hear a motion for adjournment? We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Kelly. Do I hear a second? Second from Commissioner Seton. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Have a lovely